Abandoned spaces and buildings are confusing things to look at. On the one hand, they can be eerie and scary. On the other hand, they're strangely beautiful. They're reminders of life as it used to be, and they sometimes contain traces of the people who used to use them and pass through them, like old videotapes. We're familiar with many of the world's most stunning abandoned places, and this video is a collection of our favorites. Many years ago, an eccentric landowner called Nikolai von Glen built himself a park on the outskirts of Tallinn in Estonia and included a castle at the heart of it. Rather than drawing on one style or influence, Nikolai included Russian, German, French, Greek, and Latin design elements and finished his work in 1886. The man himself passed away a very long time ago, but his castle is still standing, and so are the strange statues and sculptures in the park. According to local legend, one of the sculptures is supposed to represent the devil, but it's more likely that Nikolai intended it to be viewed as Kalevipoeg, a figure from Estonian myth and legend. The horns on the sculpture today are replicas. The Russians destroyed the originals during the First World War because they thought they might be secret radio transmitters communicating with German soldiers. Curiously, the 33-foot-high statue is modeled on Nikolai's own physical proportions, all of which have been multiplied by 4. The crocodile behind him is supposed to symbolize something about the beast that hides behind every hero. Well, we did say that he was eccentric. Visit the island of Comino in Malta, and you'll find St. Mary's Tower, standing in solitude and silence. It looked like it's been abandoned for centuries, but that isn't the case. The watchtower might have been built in 1618, but Malta's armed forces didn't officially stop using it until 2002. It's one of Comino's only prominent landmarks, and can be seen clearly from Malta and Gozo. Back when it was built, the purpose of the tower was to aid in the defense of ships passing between Gozo and Malta, which were frequently attacked by pirates. History has forgotten the name of the architect who built it, and is also hazy on what happened to it between 1829, when it was abandoned by the British military, and 1982, when it was picked up for use again by the Maltese Army. There's some suggestion that it might have been used as an isolation hospital or even a pig pen, but it's proven to be impossible to substantiate these rumors. What we can say with certainty is that it's abandoned now, and that's a great shame for such a beautiful building. The Kakari ruins are some of the most mysterious stone ruins in all of India. You can find them in Dimapur in the northeast of the country, and they're believed to have been standing there since the 10th century. Most historians believe that the Kakari civilization created them, hence their name. But that's little more than a guess based on who was living in the area during that time. Whoever made them left precious little behind in terms of clues about their identity, or even as to the purpose of their creation. It's been speculated that they were used as part of a game, akin to an extra-large version of chess, which would explain some of the wear and tear that can be seen on some of the mushroom-shaped domes. Sadly, their abandonment has led to a long period of neglect, due to which they're in a poor state and continue to deteriorate year on year. Technically speaking, they're a protected national monument, but there's no funding provided for their maintenance or preservation, and due to that, they're in danger of crumbling away completely. Shifting our attention to the Isle of Portland in Dorset, England, we find the Verne High Angle Battery. The gun battery was built in 1892 as part of the defenses for Portland Harbor, but that usage came to an end a long time ago. These days, they're of more interest as a tourist attraction and have attracted plenty of ghost stories. The people who live local to the battery say that the long, dark magazine tunnels that run beneath it are haunted. The high-angle part of the name comes from the fact that the 9-inch 12-ton guns mounted on the battery were fired at a high angle to ensure the shells dropped down on their targets, thereby causing the maximum possible damage. In truth, they didn't remain in service for long. The invention of torpedo boats and other smaller vessels meant that the guns were unlikely to hit their targets, and the battery was officially decommissioned in 1906, after which time it was briefly used to store field guns. After that, it was used to store warheads for Britain's nuclear weapons. Today, it stands totally empty. Fortuna Air Force Station in North Dakota, USA, was among the last of the radar stations to be built as part of the USA's Air Defense Command Network during the 1940s and 1950s, becoming operational in 1952. The focus of its operations was to pick up on unidentified aircraft and guide interceptor planes toward them. That was the work it went about until 1979, when it was switched off as a radar station, although it nominally remained in use as a long-range radar facility for a further 5 years beyond that. Today, its abandoned and neglected state can be blamed on private investors, who bought it from the military, stripped out all of its equipment, and then got into a dispute with the local county authorities about planning permission on the land. It was listed to be demolished at one point, but the demolition was abandoned after being partially completed, and so it's become something of an eyesore. It's not totally useless, though. A mobile telecommunications company is using the tallest part of the facility as a cell tower. The cemetery of the Burci in Sile, Italy, sounds like it might be a foreboding place to visit until you discover that Burci translates as barge, and it's not a real cemetery at all. It's more of an accidental monument to the days when goods were transported between Treviso and Venice on wooden barges during the 1970s. When that practice came to an end, because more modern transport methods became available, the wooden barges were dragged to this bend of the river and then left to rot. They're still going about that rotting process today, which most of the barges either half-sunk or firmly embedded in the muddy riverbed, where plants have started to grow in, around, and even straight through them, breaking the wood apart in the process. Humans may no longer have any use for them, but some of the birds that live on this stretch of river have taken to using them as nests. You'll even find fish and amphibians hiding underneath them, making use of them as a way of sheltering from predators. For more than 1,000 years, Herschel Island off the north coast of Canada was populated by the Thule people. Today, there's nobody there at all. The outside world knew almost nothing about the island until 1826, when Sir John Franklin visited it and found it to be home to a thriving community of around 2,000 people, with a culture based on fishing, whaling, and hunting. His arrival led to a period of European settlement on the island, with whale hunters drawn there by the fact that it was one of the last places on Earth where you could find bowhead whales. It was during that period, which lasted until the early years of the 20th century, that most of the buildings that can be seen on the island today were built, including the community house that was built in 1893 and now serves as a visitor center for the island, although there are no staff there to greet anybody. The whaling industry subsided after the 1920s, although some of the Yukon population who lived there clung on for many years after the industry dried up. It's thought that the last family who could be classed as permanent residents moved away in 1987. Today, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, albeit an empty one. The village of Kayaköy in Turkey is notable, not just because it's a ghost town, but also because it's entirely Greek in its design and appearance. Archaeologists have been able to prove that there have been human settlements on the land here since the 14th century, although almost everything that can be seen there today was built during the 1700s. Back then, it was home to approximately 20,000 Orthodox Greeks. There might still be a population there today if it were not for the Greco-Turkish War of 1919 to 1922, which led to Greeks being ordered to leave Turkey, and Turks being ordered to leave Greece. That compulsory population exchange meant that Kayaköy lost every single resident it had, and without anyone to look after it, it's deteriorated rapidly. The rooftops of many of the buildings have collapsed, including the one on top of the beautiful Greek Orthodox Church, and the state of decay has left it with the appearance of an ancient ruin, as opposed to a place that was still teeming with life as recently as 100 years ago. It's now a UNESCO World Friendship and Peace Village. Long before The Simpsons, the Flintstones were America's favorite cartoon family. They're still quite popular now, but during the 1970s and 1980s, kids were obsessed with them, and that popularity led to the creation of a Flintstones theme park in Arizona known as Bedrock City. It opened in 1972 and was sustained for a long time, not just by its connection with the show, but also by the fact that it was conveniently placed to catch passing interest from people on their way to the Grand Canyon, which is a mere 30 miles away. Even though interest in the show has waned over time, the park was still in business as recently as 2015, and only closed because the owner wanted to retire. He tried to sell the park rather than shutting it down, but couldn't find anybody to take it off his hands for the $2 million asking price he demanded. It's believed to still be in his ownership now, and although the gates are closed, the buildings are still maintained. That explains why, unlike many of the ruined, abandoned locations you've seen in this video, the facilities and attractions here are still in good condition. The dilapidated state of Villamäki in Kirkkonum, Finland is anything but elegant and graceful. It might therefore surprise you to hear that it was built and lived in by a dancer. Ellis Sinisto built this ramshackle villa on the land in 1954 by using scrap and recycled materials from wherever he could find them, and used it as a place where he could not only live, but also host parties for his artistic friends. He also created a sauna and 2 guest bedrooms in a separate building a little further down the road. Curiously, once he was done with that, he decided the perfect building to add to his humble abode was a bee tower. Ellis passed away in 2004, but many of his personal possessions are still inside his former house, which has managed to steer clear of damage from vandals, even despite the fact that it's slowly falling to pieces. Even his bicycle is still parked outside, although the tires are very flat. There were complications with Ellis's estate and will after he passed away, which has left Villamäki in a state of limbo that's lasted for 16 years and counting thus far. What's an enormous metal strawberry doing sitting by the side of a road in Wierzbica, Poland? That's a question that a lot of travelers find themselves asking as they travel between Modlin and the Polish capital of Warsaw, and see it looming in the distance. The answer to the question is that the strawberry once marked the entrance to a large farm known as Sadpol, which specialized in the growth and export of strawberries. It was one of the biggest and most successful strawberry farms in Europe, and supplied the whole continent at its peak. The good times didn't last forever though, and Sadpol farm closed down several decades ago. All the farm buildings were demolished, but for some reason, the giant strawberry was left behind. Sadly, it's a little rusty today, and has suffered damage to such an extent that a hole has opened at its bottom, large enough to allow explorers to crawl inside and take pictures. Given the severity of the rust and the structural damage, it will eventually fall to pieces, unless someone steps in to preserve and restore this unusual landmark. Hot weather can age a building quickly if regular maintenance work isn't performed. That's one of the reasons why the ruins of Vens town in Seychelles look ancient, even though the buildings here weren't built until the 19th century. This is all that's left of what was once a Christian missionary school that opened in 1876. It isn't easy to picture it as it once was, but there were once dormitories, washrooms, kitchens, and living quarters for teachers and workers here. There was also a workhouse for the cultivation of coffee and cocoa, which is how the school sustained itself. The school didn't last very long. It closed in 1889, and the circumstances of its partial demolition are unknown. Part of the ruin is now used as a viewing platform from which the entire surrounding forest can be seen, and it was even visited by Queen Elizabeth of the United Kingdom in 1972. There are no human residents here today, but the ruins do play host to a rare species of frogs known as Zooglossus. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, and you will be the first to know when a new video comes out. Thank you for watching, and see you soon.